Ahoy, hoy, everyone. It's Craig here, and today I want to talk about Disney KiteTails as well as Harmonious. I was lucky enough to be invited by Disney to their Walt Disney World 50th anniversary media event, and I was able to see the debut performance of Disney KiteTails at Animal Kingdom, the new daytime show, as well as Harmonious, EPCOT's new nighttime spectacular taking place in the World Showcase Lagoon, and I got to see it from the best spot right down front and center, looking directly at that ring barge and all of the other barges. And I have a lot of thoughts. I think a lot went wrong with both of these shows, but there's also a lot of positives. So this isn't just going to be me really tearing them down. There's good and there's bad, and I'm glad I waited a little bit to talk about it because I feel like I'm able to now be a little bit kinder towards at least Harmonious. I think maybe I've come to resent Disney KiteTails a little bit more since I first saw that show in the morning. But we're going to go all over it, and I'm going to start with Harmonious because I feel like that's the bigger of the two shows. That's your nighttime spectacular, and it should be spectacular. And honestly, for me, it wasn't. And this was a bit of a letdown. I did have some problems when I was recording the show, and so that was kind of interfering with my overall mood and opinion towards the show. But by the time it finished, I absolutely hated it. And I know that's very strong words. I don't necessarily feel that way anymore about it, but that was my initial gut reaction to it. And yeah, I wasn't the only person who I was around that had that viewpoint. But the interesting part was with all my friends around, there was like two camps. You either loved it or you hated it. So I'm very excited to see who's in the middle and just thinks, yeah, it is what it is, and it's good for that. But I won't go out of my way to see it. I'm sure there's a lot of those people out there as well too. But Harmonious, of course, takes place in the World Showcase Lagoon. So that means you have 1.2 miles of viewing opportunities for the show. Of course, that's only half true because you will get blocked by trees in some areas, rocks. It's not every single place is a good view. And if you're standing downwind, that's never good for an Epcot show. So always pay attention to where the wind is blowing. And I've heard a lot of great things about different viewing spots. Obviously the spot I was in was right as you enter World Showcase between the two gift shops, right in that area with the sloped hill where usually I like to try to film all my fireworks shows at Epcot from. And that was honestly that had to be the best view that you could get for this show because you are looking directly at that ring barge. You could see everything perfectly. The show was designed to be seen in that area. However, from what I could tell, you could also get a very similar view if you were watching from Japan. And I want to say maybe Italy would also give you a little bit of that view too, but I've heard good things about watching the show in Japan. And then I also heard that Norway is actually a decent place to watch the show. My only question is, what do you see on the different sides? So I have to go back so I know more because I know the ring barge you can't see just right in the middle with that. And it's designed very deliberately to be looked at head on. So I want to go back and see the show more from those different perspectives to see how enjoyable it is from all around. Because, yeah, there's a lot of spots you can watch it from, and not everyone's going to be able to have the absolute best view. And with Harmonious, I guess we knew that there was going to be a ton of Disney music infused into it. This is a show that is solely about music, and part of the narration for the show, before and after the show, really, really sets that in motion. The quote that is played during the show is, "All around us, the world is alive with music. Voices calling out in search of one another, and we find each other in song." One point in time, it says, "You raise your voice, and it's enough to lift the human spirit. Set the song inside you soaring, and the whole wide world will hear it." And then the show ends with, "Wherever the world leads you, Next, we hope to carry wherever the world leads you next. We hope you carry a song with you and know that the promise of someday begins inside of you today. So it really is about the power of music and spirit. And I feel like you do get that a little bit from the show based on hearing those different narration points in the show. But other than that, this story is very hard to follow. There are actually 3 acts to the show: gather, celebrate, and unite. And I feel like gather and unite are very quick moments that you blink and you miss. And celebrate is the big bulk of the entire show. But let's go over what actually happens with it. The intro starts and it's really, really beautiful. It's got this blending mashup of a lot of the choral arrangements from some of the Disney movies like Moana, Lion King, and Frozen. Frozen, it's the chanting voices. I'm not going to do it right now. Okay, I'll do it. It's a na 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 hinya na, and it's just it's so it's so pretty right in the beginning, and then it moves directly into a scene all about Moana, and yeah, it gave this show this ethereal feeling to it. Really, really beautiful, and there's all these blue hues that are then blending with these fountains that are moving around, and then you see your first laser effect with the ray that starts to swim above the ring. It's really, really gorgeous in the beginning. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm sold on this show. I also love Moana. So that kind of just hit really, that hit really well. And all of this happened during the song of How Far I'll Go. But then that directly transitions into Hercules, I Can Go the Distance. And that kind of felt right for a second, but then it started mashing back up again with How Far I'll Go, and that set off all the fireworks for the show. Because in the beginning, it's just fountains, and then the fireworks go off, and it kicks into gear. But I was a little bit wavering on that. And I can't believe I didn't mention, before even getting to the actual music with words, is that each of the songs featured is both featured in the, obviously in English, the language that's spoken in the Disney movies. But then if it takes place in a different location, then you will also get to hear selections of it in the other languages. So, for example, with I Can Go the Distance from Hercules, you hear the English version, but then you also you hear it being sung in Greek as well, too. And that carries on for all of the songs, generally for the most part. There's like one section with Princess and the Frog that obviously it just stays in English because that takes place in the United States of America, specifically in New Orleans for that film. So they didn't have to really get into any other languages. Maybe Cajun. I don't know enough about that, so I'm not going to pretend like I do. But it was a nice way to try to help represent these different cultures, not just playing the English versions, but also making these different cultures, if they do show up to see the show, feel like they are a part of it because they're able to hear it, which I more than anything, I just like that we get to hear all these different languages being spoken in the show as well, too. It does feel like it adds a bit of culture to it. So I am all for that. I've talked about that before with like Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, the blend of English and French in that. It feels like it elevates it because you get to hear both languages. But I'll continue moving on into the show from the Hercules Moana mashup. Then we move into an Aladdin section, which, usually from Aladdin, you hear Friend Like Me over and over and over again for the different shows. And I'm kind of over it as much as I love that song, Robin Williams, the Genie. But instead, they go in with Arabian Nights in a very interesting interpretation of it. So I was okay with that. And the one thing I didn't like starting here, where I started getting a little choppy, is it really started to become aware that the animation was going to be beautiful in some sections and then not so beautiful. And they didn't just take the characters from the movies and place them on the screens in the ring barge, which I do appreciate that a lot. they could have easily gotten lazy and said, oh, no, we're just going to do greatest hits of the different movies and play clips from those movies on the screens. But they didn't do that at all. They did these original animations, and some of them are more beautiful than others for sure. Like I wasn't really feeling the Aladdin section with the little animation that they had for the genie. It was cool how they were incorporating different water effects and firework effects with it, but it just didn't really connect with me. But from Aladdin, it moves into the Jungle Book, which here's an example of the animation that I liked because it looked like they made the characters from the Jungle Book into little stick puppets. And then they had I Want to Be Like You playing, which, I like that song as well, too. And it's not represented a lot in Disney parks and shows. So I'll take that. But from there, it moves into the Mulan section, which I've been very vocal about my feelings on Mulan. I do not love that movie. I don't connect with the music. However, this was the most beautiful part of the show, in my opinion. The design work on the barges during this point, it hit as well as the music. And this was like throughout the entire show, this was the closest point I feel like they got to hitting an emotional core to this show, because a lot of it is just celebration and jubilation. But this part, just in the beginning, the sweeping sounds and score that they used for it, it worked. But then it gets into this little intense moment with fighting and kind of gets amped up a little bit before it goes back down into a more mellow score. So it felt a bit off in places. The emotional beats felt a bit off, but visuals on this were really pretty, as well as the next section where it was kind of a mashup of Lion King between Hakuna Matata in the beginning and then transitioning into Can You Feel the Love Tonight? And I feel like they had to place Lion King in this show. It's a no-brainer, but at the same time, too, I could have lived without this section just because Lion King is represented so much around the parks. But this was also then one of those moments where getting to actually hear an African language being sung in the show, it was like, okay, that's a cool element. That's why I'm happy that this section is in, even if Lion King does feel a little bit played out. But so at this point, if I'm remembering correctly with it, the show just like hardcore comes to a stop with transitions. The transitions, for the most part, minus one section that I'm about to talk about, were very, very awkward and felt like they were cues for, okay, you should pause at this moment. It didn't feel very natural at all. But this moves into a Beauty and the Beast section where there's like this rose that's made out of a laser that's right up above the ring barge. It's really pretty. And then it moves into a heart. And the Beauty and the Beast section is just so short and just very quick instrumental, but then bounces straight into Hunchback of Notre Dame. And, I love the song Out There. That's the song that's featured in the show. Thought it was a lot better done in Happily Ever After. Something about it just connected more there. Maybe because in Happily Ever After, they took that piece of the movie out, and you saw Quasimodo jumping along the cathedral and dangling. In this part of Harmonious, there is a little bit of movement on the screens, but not a lot. It just felt stagnant. The water's moving, fireworks are shooting off, but in terms of the animation, it was just kind of still. And Out There, I feel like you have to have that Quasimodo movement in it to really, really sell that song. So for me, glad I got to hear the song, but kind of felt like a bit of a letdown in that way. But like the stained glass imagery they used in it was really pretty, but yeah, just then something didn't hit right. But from that point, then it really started picking up a little bit better with these transitions and moving through. So then we move into Brave and Merida in the song Touch the Sky. And this was a supernatural transition. It felt like Out There was supposed to go directly into the song from Brave, and the music was perfect in this. It just really sounded good in this section, but the imagery was weird at points, like where Merida's head is in the middle of the ring barge and then her hair takes over all the other barges. That to me was a little bit just off-putting, I guess is the best way to say it. Moving from Brave, though, then we got into Coco, which I am so happy to see this as part of the show, because Coco is probably my top 3 Pixar movies. It is such a good movie, and they do play Remember Me at the start of it, which was an obvious choice and not my favorite choice, but I'll get into that. Well, not what I wanted to be my favorite choice for it. And with Remember Me, they played like kind of the poppier version that would be over the credits, not necessarily a genuine version of that song from the movie. I mean, you have the De La Cruz version, of course, that's very boisterous, but I would have loved at this point for it to take an emotional turn and have a version that was very much like Miguel singing to Mama Coco at the end. Then that would have been like, okay, pull those tears, especially because the imagery in this section, showed all the photos of the family and stuff. They could have packed an emotional punch, but they went with pop. But then it also blends in a little bit of Saludos Amigos, just really quick before they get into The World Is Mi Familia, which I like that song. But again, I feel like they could have went straight emotional with this section if they would have went from a sad version of Remember Me into then Proud Corazon and really lifted up and made it about family and singing. And yeah, I just feel like they could have made better choices with that section, but that's just me. Because I love Coco so much, I feel like I'm extra hard on it for that reason. And then from the Coco section, we go into the United States of America and dig a little deeper from Princess and the Frog. And I didn't really care for this arrangement of that song. It's probably my favorite song in the movie. I don't know. It's a toss up between that and Almost There. Those are my 2 favorites, but the arrangement of this just didn't really hit home for me. Not that it shouldn't be part of the show, because as a celebration piece, it was out there. It was big. They made this song even bigger than it is in the movie. But yeah, it just wasn't my taste in that way. And from there, they go for the emotional ending, which, at this point in most Disney shows is where you'd have that original song meant for the show. But instead, they decided to use Someday from the Hunchback of Notre Dame soundtrack, which it's a beautiful song, but this is where the pacing and style of the show just mixed with the story just didn't make sense, because it went from celebrating. All of a sudden, now we're going to leave you with this actual really sad but hopeful song, but probably a little bit more sad than hopeful. And yeah, that kind of just that didn't flow with me at all. This is where I started seeing people tearing up, but for me, it was like the opposite. I was like, this just feels forced at this point. And then they even try to use this effect where, it's building up and then there's this like vacuum that just has everything flash to black, and then all the oxygen is sucked right out and you can hear it, and it's a solid pause in the quiet after like that little rumble with it, and then you have the big boisterous end. And yeah, it does try to appease to your emotions with it. It just didn't really get with mine. But then the entire show ends and you start to hear that EPCOT anthem that you could hear inside the EPCOT experience in the park, if you went and ever saw like the model and what's coming up for EPCOT. And then it was also featured at the D23 Expo in 2019. It's actually a beautiful orchestral arrangement. I really like it. And it's great as ending music, but it would have been cool if they could have incorporated it in another way in the show. And the show does continue on after it's finished and keeps featuring the fountains and little different segments and animations. And I recorded some of it, but a lot of people were talking, so I didn't get to fully enjoy that section. So that'll be one of the times that I go back and get it. But that's a recap of the show as a whole. And like I said, I was very hard on it last night. I hated it immediately in the moment. Watching it back, I still am not a huge fan of it. I loved Illuminations, and I did like Epcot Forever towards the end. I liked the second version of it better than the first version with the kites. But I just, Harmonious didn't feel right to me. It felt right in the way that it's about music being shared by all cultures in their own way. So for that, it ties into Epcot. But for me, there was just no emotion in the show. And that's what always connects with me in any Disney show. You have storytelling. If there's good storytelling, then that will hook me in. Or if you have emotion, that will pull me in. And every show has that emotional moment, from Happily Ever After to Illuminations, when it hit that point with the orchestral version of We Go On, as the fireworks were just slowly bursting in the sky and dropping down. It is a key standard of Disney fireworks, and it just never had that moment for me. So I didn't connect emotionally. I did enjoy some of the music in it, but it just didn't fully work through for me. And that's just my opinion, though. I will never bash anyone for liking the show, except my friend Molly. I will probably give her crap about it for the longest time. But if you enjoy the show, I am so happy for you. The team that worked on it clearly did an amazing job technologically. Are these barges and arms necessary to make a good show? Probably not. Are they impressive to look at? Absolutely. When they're swinging and the fountains are swirling from the top of them and they're shooting fireworks out of the ends, it's cool. It's cool. I will give them that. They decided to do things that they haven't done before in this show. Just, is it what made the show? Did they focus too much on that and less on finding an impactful story and in those key critical moments? I mean, they obviously feel like they did because of it, but again, it didn't connect for me. So I enjoyed the technological aspects. I enjoyed some of the imagery, some of the music, but overall, for me, I will go back to see it a couple more times from different perspectives, continue filming it so I can get a video that I'm truly proud of with it. But it's not going to be that show that I rush to. And I guess that's okay. But I hope Enchantment becomes a good successor for that, because if there's 2 nighttime shows at Walt Disney World that I'm not really huge on, that's going to be upsetting for me, because fireworks are part of the reason why I love Disney. That I love Disney music and I love Disney fireworks, and then everything else is far below it. So yeah, that's a lot. But now moving on to Disney KiteTails, a complete different story. Again, the daytime show happening in the Rivers of Light Stadium, which, man, this place just must have a curse on it. I was joking around with a friend that was what happened in this arena, that there just happens to be failure after failure after failure. The Jungle Book show that happened for a limited time on it was awful. Rivers of Light just was a mess. Beautiful music, but just did not work for me, besides the barges with the animals on it. That's about the only thing that did. And now we have Disney KiteTails, and you watch it during the day because, you have to be able to see the beautiful imagery of these kites. And, well, the show is long, and I don't know if it's going to change after releasing this. So I just want to preface that as we saw the first version in a lot of the artwork and stuff, and I guess from what I understood later in the day from other people, is that they had a Jungle Book version of the show, at least, and then a Lion King version of the show where Simba got to fly, and I did see the photos of it, so I know for a fact that it did happen. But a lot of the artwork of the show as it was first being released was showing the Simba and the Zazu. So when they just didn't come out, that was very jarring. But our show time was supposed to start at 11 o'clock. And at 11 o'clock, performers started coming out with these simple flat kites, and they were just flying them around. And that went on for what felt like almost 10 minutes. I think it was at least 5 or 10 minutes. And then the next portion of the show started where they had performers come out with these awesome puppets from Finding Nemo that were two turtles, well, technically 3 turtles, 2 that were resemblant of Crush and then 1 of Squirt. And they were going around to all the different sections and getting as close as possible to the audience and making them feel connected. It was a very genuine moment as they were trying to attempt to connect with everyone who was in the stadium. I love this section. They even handed out these little turtles to get everyone involved in the show as well. Well, a couple people involved in the show, like maybe 10 or 15, but again, a nice touch. It brings the audience into it, makes them feel a part of it. Very, very nice. And this goes on a little bit longer. And then at that point, the next thing we saw was the one barge that moves around the park that has the performers on it, not the characters, but like the drummer and the band. They pulled up and announced that, get ready for KiteTails, and one more kite of Mr. Ray came out. But at this point, we're going on 15, 20 minutes of just pre-show. This was not a part of the show because they were still doing the countdown moment saying, in 10 minutes, Disney KiteTails will begin. So this just all felt really weird. But then the show did kick off, and it started, again, this was the Jungle Book version of the show that we saw. So it started out with these performers carrying these. Basically, it looked like an umbrella made of trees, as well as then kind of like the little like shish kebabs, I guess, that Baloo would make in the movie. And the little like umbrella trees looked very similar to the Finding Nemo, the musical jellyfish. So I wouldn't be surprised if these were repurposed. That's what all of us were kind of thinking. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these performers also spent some time at Finding Nemo, the musical. It would make a lot of sense. But the performers bring out these items, and this kicks off where the kites really get in motion. There was a Baloo balloon that was also a kite as well that was flying around and being pulled by the jet skis. There was the prickly fruit in again, that like shish kebab form that was flying around, and other kites. And it was pretty, but it was wild. It's like what would happen if you attached Macy's Day Parade balloons to the back of jet skis? And it was when the section of Baloo saying with the Bare Necessities playing came to an end. Literally, the jet skis drove over by the opposite side of the stadium. They only filled one side of the stadium, like the left side, and then the right side was completely empty. The jet skis drove over there, and Baloo just floated down into the section, and then they started wrapping them up. It was nuts. It was absolutely nuts. And then they moved into Colonel Haiti's March. And so in the actual amphitheater section, they had performers now carrying kind of like elephant puppets and doing the entire march, which was fun. I really like this section. And then that wraps up the show by moving into the final section with I Want to Be Like You and King Louis balloon kite, as well as extra other kites that are flying around. And again, the balloons are really cool. They're not the prettiest things in the world. The colors are vibrant. They will probably fade with time. And they don't, they're not the most detailed, I should say. I don't know how they would have gotten more detailed because these are giant balloons, but I enjoyed them in the moment. And the more I looked at them later in photos and videos, I was like, oh, that's it. They appear better in person than they do visually on photos and videos. But uh, as after that, the show ended. They pulled him around on a jet ski a couple times. He fell in the water, and then the show was just done. And it felt like there was that 15-20 minutes of pre-show to build up to a quick 10-minute show. So the entire thing just felt incomplete. I loved the music. Absolutely loved the music. I feel like they did a fantastic job, and I would like music released from this show. It was perfect. But other than that, it was kind of a flop. And I feel like this is a show, if you can show up like a couple minutes before it starts, if you can show up right before the balloon portions start, that's even better. But if you show up a couple minutes before the pre-show and you can get in the stadium, awesome. Watch it, have a good time. Your kids are probably going to love it. You'll have a couple moments to relax and get off your feet. You're going to burn your butt because the sun is still just baking all of the seats in the stadium, and it's really uncomfortable. It's really hot. I wish they had some shade there. I don't know if they'll ever be able to fix it, but you know what? It's a nice little break away. But to me, it's a break. It's not an attraction that or a show that you seek out. It's a nice thing that it's and I why not watch it? I could use 30 minutes off where I'm not walking around or waiting in a line. I'll just sit and watch the show. So it was I liked it more in the moment, and then as time went on, I feel like I got a little bit more resentful towards it. But I also want to go back and see the Lion King version too, because as I've already said once in this, I love the Lion King. Probably my favorite Disney movie, at least in the Renaissance era, if not of all the movies. I really enjoy it so much. But that's it. That's my thought on Disney KiteTails as well as Harmonious. Again, I know it's not the most positive. I tried to find the positive aspects of it that I did enjoy. But yeah, there was obvious problems in both of these shows. And Harmonious, you can't fix that. And we don't know how long it will be around at this point. Probably 20 years, just like Illuminations. Maybe they'll switch out the show, since it is projections and in terms of the ring barge, and then animation on the digital screens for the rest of the barges. Maybe they switch out the show and make it different. Maybe they do holiday tags. Who knows? I feel like there's ways to freshen that up, but with KiteTails, I feel like they need to go back to the drawing board, flesh it out a little bit more, make it more about being a show that you want to go out of your way for than one that you just happen to stumble upon. And it could be a really good form of entertainment at Animal Kingdom, but right now it's just not great. So I know a lot of you haven't had the chance to already be here and see this entertainment. Maybe you watched the Harmonious live stream, which it's always going to be different in person than watching a live stream. But I'd also love to hear your thoughts on it. So if you watched either show in the parks or just videos of them and you want to share your thoughts, please leave it all in the comments below. I do actually want to know what other people are thinking with this. I really am trying to get a grasp on the general consensus with it, and it's very difficult. So I want to know what you think. So leave that all in the comments below. And also, please, please, please take a second to hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. And again, if you have any other videos you'd like to see or any show ideas, always leave those in the comments. But that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble on for way too long about Harmonious and Disney KiteTails. And I'll see you again real soon in a different video. I will also be sharing my thoughts about Disney Enchantment Magic Kingdom's new fireworks show, but that happened on a different day, and that's why it's not all together. So stay tuned. Keep an eye out for my thoughts on Disney Enchantment. But I appreciate you all, and I need you to take care. Goodbye.